Yes. Ready? Yes. Good morning, everyone, here at the Global Festival of Ideas for the Sustainable Development, and to this very nice press moment here at the World Conference Center in Bonn. We are happy that you're all here, and we would also welcome those colleagues who are following us on the web. And the third thing is basically that we can announce that this very precious action campaign will be hosted here in Bonn, right next door, as part of the UN family in Bonn. And we would like to welcome those colleagues here today, because they will complement this UN Bonn family with very fancy and attractive tools. And we are happy to see more of this in the future. And as they are so fancy, this is also the first global playable conference on SDGs. So, before I introduce the distinguished speakers here, I just want to give an organizational background for those who are following us via the web. You are kindly invited to present questions to us via Slido. So it is slido.com, either via the PC or even via the mobile phone. And we will then forward those to the speakers. You need to introduce before that the hashtag of this conference, and that is mentioned here in the background, but I tell you it's GFI4 as a number and then SD. And you have to choose live stage in order to send us your questions. So now let me introduce you the speakers. I have here on the far right, my right and your left, it's Mrs. Sarah Poole. She's Deputy Assistant Administrator at the UNDP. It's the United Nations Development Program, and she's based in New York. I have then Dr. Ingolf Dietrich. He's Commissioner for the Sustainable Development Agenda 2030, and he is from the BMZ, as we say in German, the German Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development. Then I have Mrs. Ishbel Matheson. She is the Director of the Public Affairs and Communications of the Overseas Development Institute. Mitchell Toomey, the Global Director of the UN SDG Action Campaign, and to my right, Mr. Ashok Sridharan, who is the Mayor of the Federal City of Bonn. Yeah, I will now hand over to Ishbel. I think she will give some short notes, and then it will be Mitch. Thank you.
So this is just to say that we're very excited to be here at the festival and to be co-organizers of this wonderful gathering. More than ever, progress is needed towards the Sustainable Development Goals, and we have to figure out how to get to those goals much faster than we are at present. ODI has been working both on the run-up to the goals, but when they were set in 2015, and since they've actually been agreed. And one of the things our research has showed that if we carry on at the current rates of progress towards these goals, we're simply not going to reach them. So we need a revolution. We need fresh approaches and new thinking if we're going to reach the Sustainable Development Goals. And this, in essence, for us, is really what this conference is about. We want to generate new ideas and new thinking to help us achieve this really ambitious global agenda. And one of the things that we know is that we can't do it on our own. So one of the themes of the conference for us is collaboration. Now, we're doing that through the world's first playable conference. We've got this fantastic game, 2030 Hive Mind, which people are now playing across the conference to really show the collaboration, the trade-offs needed in order to reach the SDGs. But I also want to say that this entire festival has been a product of collaboration through some really excellent partnerships that we've had with a variety of partners, and we've talked about them at various points and their logos around the festivals, but we really wanted at this point to use this opportunity to do a shout out for those partners. So if I can just give them a bit of a name check. First of all, City of Bonn, one of whom's represented here. CEPI, the Data Pop Alliance, Engagement Global, Plan International, the Salzburg Global Seminar, UNDP, World Food Programme and World Resources Institute. And I think just even in that list you'll see how diverse the partners are, reflecting the diversity of topics that are going to be covered here. So we're really excited to have everyone here. We really want fantastic ideas and great conversation and collaboration over the next few days.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ishbel. I'm Mitchell Toomey, the director of the SDG Action Campaign for the United Nations, and we are delighted to announce officially today our fully operational opening of the Global Campaign Center in the Hauskastanien, a historic building that is now part of the UN campus. We're delighted to be there. We've already found enormous synergies with the other UN entities that are on the campus, and starting with the UN Staff College for Sustainable Development, which is actually the institute that makes sure all of the offices around the world of the UN have the latest updates and innovations that they can share globally. So we're going to be able to feed our work right into that ecosystem. But outside of the UN, we're seeing an even more amazing reception from the city of Bonn, from the regional government, the federal government, and the associations and organizations that are already here in Bonn doing the work on sustainability that we're happy to join. Our view of sustainability and the Sustainable Development Goals might be a little different than the interpretation that people are familiar with. We think of sustainability as an ecological issue. But now with the Sustainable Development Goals, there's been a very specific instruction to think of social, economic, and environmental concerns in one package. Because we've all learned we need to live in this world in an integrated way. We don't get to choose which things we can care about. We have to consider all of them. The point of integration for development is the human, is the person, and they have to touch on all of these things. So we believe that if we start by addressing individual human needs, that can scale up to institutional arrangements, but it's very difficult to go the other way around. So how do we attract people and individuals to get involved? Our job is to try to find ways of doing things that are very interesting and attention-getting all by themselves, without forcing people to think about the deeper topics behind the goals, to really let them come in and have an open environment like this. And we're very lucky to have this wonderful facility at the World Conference Center here in Bonn that makes itself an obvious candidate to have this kind of open knowledge sharing, as you can see by booths and exhibits from lots of partners, an open plenary, and lots of spaces to have these kind of conversations. We'll be here every year. We'll be building this event into larger and larger capacity. We hope to invite more and more commercial entities and others who have something to share about the agenda. And we'll do that with two means in mind. We have to do that anyway. Part of our job is to create global networks. But we feel that giving people a chance to see what's happening here in Bonn is going to open a lot of eyes and show that Germany is already taking the lead in helping the UN through the sustainable development challenges. So I think it's basically a welcome to this event. Thank you for attending the official opening of the campaign center. And I hope you have a chance to explore the kind of interactive aspects of the event, including the game, because we're throwing out the rule book and looking at new ways to get people involved in development. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes. So we have one question here on the screen, but we would like probably the colleagues here just on the ground give a first go. Is someone there who wants to raise a question? No? Mrs. Tyson, you're looking at me? Okay. Would you have one?
Yeah. All right,
Could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Joseph Mensah, and I'm doing an internship at UNFCCC. My question goes to the director for the SDG Action Program. Why was Bonn selected as the base to harmonize the actions of this campaign?
Well, there's many reasons. Bonn is, first of all, a city that's becoming known throughout the UN community as the place to talk about sustainability. This is the city where the difficult climate negotiations really happened. The real nitty-gritty technical details were all ironed out here. The kind of community of think tanks and other organizations is here to accelerate that. There's also a pragmatic point of view that we have to support the globe, and we have to be in a good central time zone that can cover Africa, the Arab states, parts of Asia and some of the Americas, this is a perfect place to do that. This is a perfect place to be a global organization because we can, in real time, during business hours, touch almost the entirety of the human population. So we have a little bit of support in the Americas and in East Asia, but from everywhere else in the world, we can support from here. So that's a practical reason as well. Thank you.
Thank you. We've also received now questions via Slido, and if no one has a burning one here, we would go to this one. How do we truly ensure that no one will be left behind? How do we reach the most marginalized and furthest behind? Who dares to, to answer? Sarah, do you want to?
Thank you very much. This is on, yes. No, I think, again, it's an excellent question, and this touches on so much of what we've already engaged on in discussions and ideas in the first part of this fantastic conference. And I think the question, first, the notion of leaving no one behind is so fundamental to the SDGs. I mean, this is a game changer in terms of how we think about, not just how do we think, how do we act on development differently than in previous generations and previous decades. So it's a very tall order, and it really requires us to do take several different approaches that can get us there. The first, it's about the issue of data, and this has been a challenge, I think, for all countries around the world looking at the SDGs. How do you actually know what the populations are dealing with? How do you know what the issues that are facing? How do you know who's excluded and really not benefiting from the development gains in the country? So that's a first. And then I think the second, and it's something that came up again in the morning session, is the issue of localization. This is an incredibly exciting global agenda. It's an incredibly one with strong commitment from 193 world leaders. But to really make these happen, it needs to happen on the ground. It needs to happen with the voices of the people. It needs people identifying the solutions that work in their community and that can really target and aim and use different means for identifying who are the people that are left behind, what are the solutions, and then how do you engage upwards and downwards within a context of a country. So it's ambitious and it's challenging, but I think also festivals like this, where it actually brings very concrete ideas and also different kinds of partnerships. We know the engagement of civil society is absolutely fundamental. We know the engagement, for example, of private sector. We know the engagement to volunteers and community members themselves, and of course, together with local authorities and government. So we have an agenda out there, but I am optimistic that if we really tackle this from the ground up and also working hand in hand with governments and other partners, that this notion of leaving no one behind can be achieved.
Thank you, Sarah. Someone to add on or no? Another question is basically coming probably for you. Given Germany's leading position in sustainability, how will Germany support sustainable development in other countries and regions?
Okay, thank you very much. But let me, before coming to other countries and regions, let me start that we are trying to implement the agenda, the SDGs, on 3 pillars. And the first pillar is starting at home in Germany. And we have, since a few weeks, we have a national strategy. It passed the cabinet, and our national strategy is the frame for implementing the agenda, the SDGs, in Germany. And our national German strategy is structured by the 17 goals. We have a lot of global responsibility in our German strategy. It's not just concentrated and focused on Germany. But let me come to other regions in the international level. Yes, we as Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development, we have different ways to support. First is through all our programs. I just made the remark that we need to mainstream. We do not have one entity, one division responsible for SDGs. The whole BMZ, the whole ministry, and the whole German government, and not just the government, also the other actors like society, like municipalities, have to implement the agenda. And we do this and we support this in our partner countries. We do it through the so-called 5 Ps, people, planet, prosperity, partnership, and one I forgot, the 5th one at the moment. So these are more or less equal like our political priorities in the ministry. We also have some programs like the initiative program, where we try to support countries who try to implement the agenda in their national policy. This is a big challenge for many countries, and we support them in adapting their national policy towards sustainability. And then a third pillar have something like the SDG action campaign, which is also the international level, to bring the agenda, to bring the messages of the agenda to the world, to all actors of society worldwide. And that's the reason why we think it's so important, why we support the action campaign, and why we are so happy to have you here in Bonn. And congratulations for this event you organized for today.
Thank you, Dr. Dietrich. The mayor would like to add on, right?
Yes, it's almost the same on a municipal base, because we do also have partners around the globe, cities where we are cooperating in projects. For example, we try to just teach children in the primary school how to live sustainable. And it's a partner project with La Paz in Bolivia. And we do have other projects with Chengdu, for example, in China, with Cape Coast in Africa. So I think we do have lots of opportunities to give a good example, give a very good example, how to cooperate, not only within Germany, but around the globe. And we engage ourselves as well in platforms like ICLE. ICLE is a platform with more than 1,000 cities working for sustainability and trying to make the world a bit more sustainable.
Thank you. There is a question here from the audience. I give you my microphone, please.
Heiner Benking, I'm journalist in Berlin, but also with the Global Commons Alliance within ECOSOC. So I looked into the issues for 40 years. You cannot believe it. My question is, looking into the SDGs very deeply, I see only one, the last, the 17th goal, which is really overarching. And I think, and I would like to have your comment, I think the title is a little bit too narrow, because we have to go beyond revitalizing the global partnership. We have to look into the common frames of references, like we said with Noel Brown before and after Rio. We have to look into our mindsets, our mind bugs, our mind boggles, the approaches to come to meta-paradigm. So please see what Professor Hacke and Professor Altmann from Leopoldina and the advisory board to the SDG have been saying. We have to go to the root causes. And there's much work. We presented 1 week before Christmas at the UN in Geneva, and I'm here to share and maybe also dare and gift.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, you obviously have a rich understanding of this subject and the processes behind it, and that's you know, it's nice to have that deep kind of question, because Goal 17, in fact, you're right, it covers one piece of it. But I think if you're very familiar with the entirety of the process, you know that the agenda is larger than just the goals. There is a declaration that covers this point, that overarching, beyond just measuring the specific indicators and targets, there's a mentality behind this whole agenda. There's the frame of reference, as you mentioned, that asks for some very challenging assumptions to don't find any of those directly in a goal, but the goals can't exist without them. You know, and so I think that's the challenge, is thinking of it as a holistic thing, but also giving people something specific that they can individually grab onto. So I welcome your inputs, and I'd love to hear more about what you've done in December in Geneva. Thank you.
And just to say from me, you talked about the last goal, but actually one of the things that we're looking at in the conference is how we can see this network of achievement across the... One of the interesting things about it is bringing it back down to policy levels. There are some policies which are effectively super policies and which all governments should be focusing on because they affect so many of the different goals. For example, primary education is a super policy and it affects a lot of other goals. So if you go and play the game, you will see that actually it's about the interlinks between the different goals and actually thinking about policies. Some policies are supercharged to enable you to reach a number of goals and not one. And I think that's one of the main benefits and insights that you get from playing Hive Mind.
Thank you. There is a question from the gentleman over there, and he has a microphone. From the gentleman over there, and he has a microphone. Please.
I'm Vinay Lal from India. First, congratulations to the city of Bonn and the UNDP for this wonderful knowledge platform.
Yeah. Can you speak into it?
Yeah, wonderful knowledge platform. After coming here, I've come to know of the scenario in some countries in Africa and also in Germany. I've been working on the SDGs to develop an Asian perspective for the last 2 years, and we have covered about 15 Asian countries. And the challenges we face, which has not been touched in the morning session, and I hope in the next 2 days it will be covered, is the important difference between the MDGs and the SDG is disaggregation level assessment of the developing countries. Do not generate or maintain data at levels of disaggregation. And I think we must discuss on that issue. The second is a number of indicators are still output oriented. And people do not know the difference between an output indicator and an outcome indicator. We must develop some time on that. And the third issue, which I have already spoken, is that if you want to have an output, one department can attain a single output of a higher education rate. But if you want an outcome, the impact of the output, you require departments to work together. And the local governments in almost all the Asian and African countries, and I'm sure it is also in Germany, it is there, the problem is there in the US, they do not work together. They work in silos, department-specific operations. If you want a clean city, the headache is put on the waste department, not on the waste creating or the waste using department. Now, what does the UNDP think about developing an integrated system where we have a common budget, common city planning, and program management? Thank you.
Yeah, on the first issue of your comment, was more a comment than a question on data. I completely agree on the challenge the countries of the South have on data. It sounds a little technical, data, but it's highly political. And it was also, this is also important in relevance to the first question, leave no one behind. To leave no one behind, we have to know who is left behind. We have to really need disaggregated data on gender, on age, and on other things to know who is outside, who is left behind. And so the German government, the BMZ, is heavily engaging in supporting the so-called partner countries in building up data. In what we call the review process to report to the UN system just what it's measured gets done. This is a very important phrase. And so we support heavily exactly in that challenge.
Thank you. Sarah?
Just a brief comment, because I think it really reinforces what Dr. Dietrich said. And I so agree with you more that data is such an important component to the SDGs. It was for the MDGs, but we know that the SDGs are very ambitious. We have the targets, and without the data, we don't know, are we reaching that agenda for 2030 or not? So I won't go into further on the details on the data, but very much agree with you. I think several organizations, certainly within the UN, but the policy institutes, the research organizations, even here in the festival, I've already come across a number of organizations who are looking at the issue of data. And of course, we have the formal data, the data from the ministries and so forth, but we've also heard today the power of the citizen, of the people-driven data as well. And I think it's an important complement when we look at the holistic nature of this. Just also one comment on you mentioned the MDGs, and of course the MDGs are the backbone to what eventually became the SDGs. We talk about the unfinished business, the unfinished mile, what was not achieved in the MDGs that we need to move ahead with. But we also know that the SDGs are more ambitious and that they do require this integration across ministries. So it's not just a single output, but really it's a totality of accelerating the progress that's expected.
Thank you. Is there another question here? The gentleman there in the back.
Good morning, and congrats on the conference so far. One of the most motivated I've felt at the conference for a long time. Good job. The SDGs will require, I'm from the Organization of American States. It's the UN on a smaller scale of 35 countries, and we do everything the UN does. So I thought it was important to be here. The SDGs will require lots and lots of things, but I believe one of the things that it will require most of all is integrated policies. And we have to train and retrain our government officials and private sector officials to prepare integrated policies that reflect partnerships as the main vehicle to attainment of the policies. What do you think?
Well, just a quick response to that. An event like this is designed around the premise that partnerships are waiting to emerge if we just put the right combination of the chemistry together, right? And we can't just hope against hope that it works. We have to really selectively make sure that we understand who's out there and who should be meeting with whom. We also encourage people to set up multi-stakeholder groups or committees that are there to advise governments on how to take steps and how to engage citizens and so on. And the reason for that is the establishment or the task of establishing a multi-stakeholder committee that actually covers all of the demographics of a community and of the goal areas is a very revealing process because it's difficult, because usually people don't have a network that's big enough to do that. And so the education that people go through just by starting a collaboration already is an outcome, because you're talking about people realizing that they need to do this more and more often. So we structure everything that we do around something that someone can't do entirely by themselves. They can do a piece, the policy making, but then they need the communications to work as well. But you're dead right. That's the challenge here, is to bring people together to, instead of just thinking of how can I integrate all of these goals, how can we integrate our work together better. Sorry.
Thank you. There is a question for the mayor. He's burning to answer, and we would like to give him the opportunity. So, Mayor, what's special about Bonn, and also as a backdrop to events like this conference?
Yes, I think we do have the infrastructure. We do have the conference center. We do have the airport nearby, the Cologne-Bonn airport. And also the airport in Frankfurt is not so far away. We do have the railway station, so you can reach Bonn quite well. And we do have the capacity in hotels, for example, for conference like this. But much more important is we do have the players over here. We do have the action campaign. Fortunately, we do have the action campaign. And we do have all the players, the UN organizations, located here in Bonn, and many NGOs handling with sustainability, such as ICLE, as I mentioned already, but many other NGOs as well. So the Secretary General, when he was here last year, he said that Bonn is a sustainability hub. And I think this is the reason why conferences like this one is very well done, that they are here in Bonn.
On this note, another question, and probably that's the last one we would like to do. It's probably for Dr. Dietrich. Do you think Bonn will become a global hub for advocating the SDGs? What does it mean for Germany?
For sure. For sure. That's why we are here. That's why we are opening the SDG action campaign, that it will come the hub for bringing the message of the SDGs to the world, to all actors of society worldwide. And this is not just important for the city of Bonn, like the mayor said, the hub for sustainability we are creating here, and which is growing here. This is also important for Germany. This is a quite important aspect of our 3 pillars I just mentioned, to bring the message of the SDGs to the world, and that's why we have a center here, and why this is very important.
Thank you, Dr. Dietrich, and thank you for all the speakers who joined us here, and thank you for the audience listening to us and asking interesting questions, as well those who are following us via the web. Thank you, and bye-bye.